join me in thanking Robert for being I forgot to give Ron his coveted BC Waterways mug. I will give it to you in a moment, but I won't forget with Robert. Okay, right, great performance, and Ron?
I thought I didn't warrant it.
You're warranted. You're warranted. There you go. I'm now going to hand off to Wenda Mason, who's with Waterbucket, Rebate. I should point out that in terms of the program development, Wenda and Robert and myself we spent many hours on the phone kind of crafting how we wanted to try and stimulate discussion. So I hopefully that's taking place. Something to say about Wenda, but Wenda is going to now facilitate a panel discussion where we bring it down from the global to the narrow, and you'll pick up that theme. Wenda, you're an Aggie by training, right? That's the key.
I'm not an engineer. I'm an
Aggie by training, right? So we've broken the engineering stream. Right?
Yeah.
And I guess you've been with the province for the best part of, 15 years, and you're with Land and Water British Columbia. So on that note, I'm just going to head off to you, and you can take away the panel.
Okay. Can we have our panelists come forward, please? I think what we'll do is try and sit you all around the one table so that you can share a microphone when we get to the question period at the end. That may work the best, I think. So this microphone is on and works, and we also have the on mic. So me being rather practical throughout the planning session that Robert and Kim and I spent, as Kim alluded, hours on the phone because they were in Vancouver and I'm in Victoria. I like to get down to the real practical stuff, and I said we need a panel, we need some real life stories. So they challenged me with that, and fortunately waterbucket.ca has success stories on it. So I went to the website and went through some of the information that's presented on that website and started phoning. And fortunately we have Ray Fung from West Vancouver who's agreed to do a presentation on the West Vancouver story. Dale Danilenko from the city of Vernon. Bob Harasco, who's with Black Mountain Irrigation District and also a consultant. And Eugene Lalonde, who's with Sustainable Shuswap. And my goal was to try and get very diverse stories, so that's what we have here. I know there's many of you that have demand management success stories as well. But these ones were a little bit unique and brought a different perspective. Each has their own story to tell. So we're going to start off with Ray, if you'd like to move over to this side here. And you can use the mouse to move the slides ahead, or you can use the arrows on there. So we're going to ask each presenter to take about 10 or 12 minutes to present, and then we'll do a panel discussion at the end, give you an opportunity to ask questions, and perhaps share some of the successes that you've had as well. Ray?
Thanks, Wenda. In fact, the West Vancouver situation isn't on the Water Bucket website yet, but Joanna and I will talk. The District of West Vancouver, what we wanted to do was we wanted to provide overall, like Wenda said, a variation of different regions and different situations. And so District of West Vancouver provides more of a sort of an urban, southern province, lower mainland type of an example. In the 10-12 minutes, what I want to cover is just to provide a quick introduction of the District of West Vancouver and provide some of the context behind our DSM strategies. I want to focus in actually on the water conservation strategy. I'll tell you a little bit about that and the progress that we've had to date. I understand that we'll actually leave the questions until the very end, and so we'll do that. So to begin, just some facts and figures about the District of West Vancouver. It's got a population of about 42,000. It has an area of 89 square kilometers. It is a member municipality of the Greater Vancouver Regional District. The land uses within our municipality are predominantly residential, commercial, some institutional, but no real industrial development and no agricultural to speak of. We have 13,000 water service connections, and our system comprises 4 major pressure zones. We have 3 water sources that feed the municipality, the primary one being the supply of bulk treated water from the Greater Vancouver Water District. We're also fortunate to have 2 local sources, one which is called the Eagle Lake source, which is out in the woods in Cypress Bowl. And then we also have a residential pocket that's just north of the Horseshoe Bay. It's called the Sunset Highlands area, and that's fed by Monty Zambert Creek. It's a very complex system because of the geography. We're classified an EOCP level 4 distribution system. Right now the way that it's split is that we have 60% of the water being provided by GVRD and 40% being provided by local sources. On the municipal water consumption side, just some facts and figures. From taking a look at average annual daily flows that comes some from Oliver's work, I noted that there are some figures regarding the Canadian, BC, and GVRD averages. If I take some lower mainland municipalities, those are the numbers that we get for average annual daily flows. And West Vancouver tops out at 788 liters per capita per day. So that's highest in the region, higher than the GVRD, higher than BC, and in fact higher than the national average. This is a profile of our seasonal usage. What happens is that between the winter sort of base flows and our summer peaks, we experience a 60% increase of water during the summertime, which can basically be attributed to outdoor uses, irrigation, lawn sprinkling, car washing, swimming pools, and the like. If we compare this to the rest of the regional district, the line that you see here for average day, you can note a decrease, a gradual decrease in the average day consumption for the region. The peak day is a little bit spikier, but the average day you can definitely see a decreasing trend. Maybe it's due to less data, but when we overlay the District of West Van's average day, it certainly does not show a decreasing trend. Then what we also found out was that in 2002, GVRD announced that they were going to build a $600 million water treatment plant. And as a result of that, we could see a doubling of our water rates in 5 years. So when we started out in 2002 with water, bulk water of about 20 cents a cubic meter, that it was going to go up to about 37, 38 cents by 2008. So then the question that came about was, how was the municipality going to ameliorate those type of costs? Because this is something that the residents could not accept in terms of increases to their taxes or to their water rates. So what the municipality decided was that they came up with a development plan for our own Eagle Lake resource. The Eagle Lake development plan strives to reduce reliance on GVRD water and to try and provide a greater proportion of our water needs from Eagle Lake source. That's obviously on the supply side, and so there is also interest on trying to balance it with some demand side considerations. We've talked a little bit about water metering already, and that it can be controversial. There seems to be a lot of, at certain points, political support for water metering. And so when I joined the municipality in 2002, there was a lot of interest and a lot of pressure for the engineering department to just simply implement a water metering program. I guess what I realized, and this acronym TIE has been around for 10 years, but I really realized that the water metering in it itself could be something that could be debated in the political arena, and at the end of the day, it could be sold or it could die on the vine. TIE refers to T, which is a technology, and one of the realizations is that metering is just a technology, and the technology in itself is not the total solution. It must be combined with the I and the E components. The I is the incentive. We talked about how pricing ties in with the technology. And then E is really about education and creating a water ethic. And the only way we're going to do something on the DSM side is if we combine the T and the I and the E all together. And so simply jumping to water metering was not really a solution. So instead, what we decided to do was come up with a water conservation strategy. Now, there's a lot written on water conservation strategies out of US EPA and all that. And I guess we didn't really go that route. I wanted to react to this knee-jerk reaction of simply going water metering by putting something out there as a substitute. And so we just kind of developed something in-house as our water conservation strategy. So our water conservation strategy comprises four principles. First of all, we felt that the district must show corporate leadership. We can't make our residents and other constituents do things that we're not willing to do ourselves as a municipality. Secondly, whatever happens should be fair and equitable. That if you're talking about metering, for example, and a user pay system, or when you talk about metering, what happens is that it is a fair and equitable way because you actually pay for what you use. We also made a commitment to good infrastructure management, and so when we're talking about the whole utility picture, it's just not about making life more difficult for our residents or making it more expensive. We have to look after our assets well, and Robert Hicks alluded to that in terms of the hard infrastructure and the O&M and that sort of thing. And because we didn't follow US EPA, and we didn't actually even set a target, because at that time we didn't really know what target was achievable. We just simply said that the strategy must be realistic and achievable, and the components would then all have to be have individual business cases and stand on its own. Our strategy, the overall water conservation strategy, consists of 3 overlapping strategies. First of all, to reduce unaccounted for water, to implement the DSM side with the various tools and techniques, and third, to implement best management practices. And the reason I say that they're overlapping is because some individual actions might satisfy a number of those objectives. So here are some of the things that we put down. I'm not going to go through them. I just want to show you some of the things that we kind of came up with that we incorporated in our strategy. What I did want to get to was where we are today. As it turns out, that universal water metering has now become one of the cornerstones of our water conservation strategy. And so this year we starting the implementation of retrofitting our single-family residential sector with 10,000 single-family users out there, existing single-family out there with water meters. It's a $6.5 million project, and it's expected to take about 1.5 years, not quite 1.5 years to complete. And so we've broken up the municipalities into different areas or sectors, and we're basically just blitzing from one end of the municipality to the other. We finished Area 1, or we're finishing Area 1 at the end of this month, and we already got a good start on Area 2. Another thing that we're doing is providing the municipality and showing the leadership by piloting some low-flow devices. And so what we did was that we tested some dual flush toilets in municipal facilities, and at our operations center we installed waterless urinals. We didn't actually use the water matrix brand, we used the Falcon Watercress, but they operate on the same principles. And we also have a toilet rebate program going on where you get $50 a rebate per toilet for installation of 6 liter per, or dual flush toilets. And we also provide a list of the performance models based on various performance studies that have happened in Canada and the US, and it's for the replacement only. And the unique portion about this toilet rebate program is that we take all the old toilets, we strip down the metals, get that value back, and then the porcelain is crushed and used as road base. We also applied to the province for an exemption to the current the plumbing regulations, and we were advised that now 6 liter per flush toilet will become the standard in all new construction, and that this will be effective September 30th, and that in fact the entire GVRD municipalities will be a part of this. On our side, we're also attempting to come to grips with our unaccounted for water. We thought it was maybe around 15% or so. We're starting to use this International Water Association water balance formula, and what we found was that we determined our infrastructure leakage index was of about 6.49. If I was a utility operator in South Africa or in Australia, and I had that type of a number, I'd basically be fired. So there's a lot of ways, a lot of things that we can do. And our next step is to try and verify our source meters. We also have our sprinkling bylaws now in a separate water shortage response plan bylaw. We separated it from the rest of the bylaws so that we could update this regularly. It'll make the regulations consistent with the rest of the GVRD. And there also includes a fine regime for violations. Last thing I want to talk about is the natural landscape demonstration project. I think Oliver talked a little bit about providing alternatives to grass. That as a service, what we want to see is aesthetic landscapes, but there are alternatives to grass. And so we have a $100,000 project that we're attempting to raise to try and provide alternatives to grass, like it was a woolly thyme and alternative indigenous species, xeriscapes, and native plantings to encourage the promotion of that so that people can have aesthetic landscapes but have less pressure on our water systems. Oh, last thing I want to talk about is education in the school systems. We support a play that goes around to all the elementary schools. It's called the A to Z of H2O, and it's a water conservation play that goes to every single one of our elementary schools in our school district. Many of the Lower Mainland municipalities have this. And because the GVRD has lots of resources, we also plug in the K-12, grade 12 water curriculum into the schools in our municipality, and we try and strengthen the ties there. So that's all I want to say about West Vancouver. There's some contacts, and of course we're going to have the questions at the end. Thanks.
Thanks, Ray. That was a really nice encapsulation of what West Vancouver's done. Our next speaker is Dale Danilenko, and he's the Manager of Environmental Services with the City of Vernon. And I asked him to focus specifically on the recycling water technology that they've used in the City of Vernon. And I think he's going to bring you an interesting perspective on that means of conserving water. Dale?
Good morning, everyone. Hello from the North Okanagan. I'm going to come at this topic today from a completely different perspective than any of the other speakers to date this morning, in that the whole focus of what I'm going to talk about has been the increasing use of water. And I'll explain the reasoning behind that in a moment. It was interesting that you said, Wenda, that you were looking at success stories, and I guess success is based on how you measure success. And again, I'll explain how we've measured success in terms of our reclaimed water irrigation program in Vernon over the last number of years. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the program. It's also referred to as the City of Vernon Spray Irrigation Program. I prefer to call it the Reclaimed Water Irrigation Program, but that's just myself. In the early 1970s, milfoil was becoming an issue in the Okanagan Valley Lake system. It was interfering with the recreational uses of the lakes. Nobody likes to go swimming or boating in And the Okanagan Basin Water Board did a study, and they determined that a major cause of this problem was phosphorus from municipal wastewater discharges. The three main municipalities in the valley, Kelowna, Penticton, and Vernon, looked at solutions to this problem. City of Kelowna and City of Penticton upgraded their wastewater treatment facilities to biological nutrient removal facilities, and they continue discharging their effluent from their treatment facilities to the bodies of water in the valley. Vernon, being Vernon, chose to do something completely different. We chose to implement a land-based disposal program, and I'll use that word disposal of effluent because that certainly was the case in the late 1970s and through a good portion of the 1980s. The current focus of our reclaimed water irrigation program is the beneficial reuse of reclaimed water, and that's the catchphrase that we like to use. Reclaimed water, effluent, sewage effluent, it's all the same stuff. You know, no matter how nicely you dress the pig, it's still a pig. Well, what do we do, or how did our system work in the past? We had a secondary treatment facility using trickling filters, and the effluent from our treatment facility was pumped and continues to be pumped to a large storage reservoir approximately 7 kilometers south of town. The reservoir has approximately 10 million cubic meter capacity, and even during the irrigation season it provides a minimum of 60 days storage, such that the water drawn out of that reservoir meets the category 1 criteria for use in areas of unrestricted public access, such as municipal playing fields and golf courses. From May to September, plus or minus a week or two on either side depending on weather, we remove or draw water out of our reservoir, chlorinate it, and then we distribute it to our, what we call our irrigation land base, which is made up of about 900 hectares of property, which is either controlled by the City of Vernon in some form, either through lease from the province. We formerly leased federal government land. The city has a number of acres of land that it owns, as well as we provide reclaimed water to a significant amount of privately owned property. During April to October, the city pumps all of the treated effluent from its treatment plant into the reservoir. As it does 12 months of the year, we only draw water out for the 5.5 month irrigation season. How's it going to work in future? Well, Vernon has just spent just under $30 million building a new tertiary treatment wastewater treatment plant using the BNR process, 30 years after Kelowna and Penticton did. This will allow the city to directly irrigate following filtration, UV disinfection, plus the addition of chlorine to maintain the 0.5 chlorine residual required for category 1 areas. And we will also continue to pump any effluent that's not used directly from the treatment plant to the storage reservoir. And again, May to September, reclaim water directly from treatment or from the reservoir to be used for irrigation. Now you say, well, why would you want to use it directly from the treatment plant if you can put it in your reservoir and draw it out? Reason is that other than labor and debt servicing, the next largest cost for the city's sewer utility is electricity to pump reclaimed water from our treatment plant to the storage reservoir. It's a significant lift to get it to that, from the treatment facility to the reservoir. It involves 2 major pump stations to get it up to the reservoir and 1 major pump station to bring it back. So we're looking at, by directly irrigating from the treatment facility, we'll be able to save some cost. We have a land base of about 970 hectares used for agricultural, silvicultural, and recreational uses. It's about a 60-20-20 split in that vicinity, primarily used for agricultural grazing of cattle and hay production. There is nothing produced with reclaimed water on our land base that is for direct human consumption of any kind. It's cows, trees, and golfers, and softball players. Just to give you some idea of the volume we're dealing with, we have a service population in Greater Vernon, which is the City of Vernon as well as District of Coldstream, that the City of Vernon provides wastewater treatment services for. Flow is about 13,500 cubic meters per day from about 37,000 people, which is about 5 million cubic meters a year. And the annual reclaimed water use, it can vary. It's typically 4 million to 5.5 million cubic meters a year. The highest year was 2003, in which we didn't have rain for months. lowest was 3.2 million cubic meters in 1996, where if anybody can remember back to 1996, 1997, there was no summer here. It just rained and it was cool. This was not very nice at all. So, I mean, that's an obvious statement at the bottom there for anybody who deals with water that irrigation use is weather dependent. That's obvious. What has this reclaimed water irrigation program in Vernon achieved? It has turned formerly dry, unproductive areas into green, productive areas. It has the potential in the future to reduce potable water demand by displacing these potable water uses. We have not focused on that at all, and I'll wrap this up with an explanation as to why we do this. And why Vernon does this is so that we don't discharge to Okanagan Lake. And that has been council policy since the late 1970s. So our measure of success is not efficient use of water, it's to make sure that we use enough water during the summer so that we have enough storage capacity available in our reservoirs so that all of our winter flow can go up there. And in 1997, 1998, when that didn't happen, when our reservoir filled up, suffice to say, all hell broke loose politically in Vernon, and it wasn't a pleasant time to be there. So that's bullet number 3, no discharge to water body. And that's our measure of success if we can keep water out of Okanagan Lake. We use the water twice. For domestic use, it ends up going down the sewer, it's treated, and then we use it again. And this is not necessarily a benefit to the city, the last bullet there. We've provided free water to our customers since the late 1970s. Nobody has ever paid 5 cents for a cubic meter of reclaimed water from the city of Vernon. And good thing I've got the mic on because some people might wonder if they've heard this correctly. We've actually paid people to take water and use it on their own property. So if you can believe that, but that's about to end because there's a bit of a different focus occurring at the moment. So what are the challenges with our reclaimed water irrigation program? It's to continue to abide by council policy, which is Lake District only in emergency circumstances. And emergency circumstances are if we have a significant failure in our high lift pump station to get the water up to our reservoir, or if the reservoir is full, given that hasn't been sufficient demand over the irrigation season to provide sufficient storage for the flows that we can expect over the winter season. In order to maintain city policy as population increases, as wastewater flows increase, we have to expand our land base and expand our distribution system, which comes at a cost. The need for winter storage, again, as flows increase, the need for the volume of available winter storage will increase. The need for an emergency backup. I'm outside the 50-kilometer radius from Vernon, so I can use the expression lake discharge, which is not a good thing to say in Vernon. Vernon actually spent a significant amount of money in the mid-1980s building a deep lake outfall, and since 1980, it was 86 or 87 when it was built. Since that time, it has been used for a total of 88 days in 19 years. So I don't know if that was well spent money, but it was necessary to have that in the case of an emergency discharge. Our costs are a significant issue. Pumping water is not cheap. Pump stations require maintenance. They require upgrading over time. Public acceptance is another one. We have a certain group of people in Vernon that feel, for lack of a better expression, we are poisoning our citizens through our program. That we are pumping sewage up into the air and dispersing it over town, and all the aerosols and the bacteria, the viruses, and all that we're being very nasty to our citizens. So it's a real selling case to convince people that reclaimed water is appropriate for certain uses. And people say, well, will you drink it? I say, no, I'm not going to drink it. It's not intended for potable use. But heck, I spray it on my lawn, I water my garden, water my trees. And what we have to start to look at this, and I'm sure other people in the province would already look at it, is this, view it as a resource with value, not something that we've been trying to get rid of over the years. Give it away to people, provide equipment, provide pumps, provide everything so that they'll use it on their property and do us a big favor. So So that's my spiel about reclaimed water. And just to sort of give some indication as to what has been done in Vernon. And I'll back it up a little bit. It was 2 years ago, and there's actually some people in the audience that could correct me on the exact timing. City of Vernon used to have a number of different water utilities. City of Vernon Water Utility, the District of Coldstream had their own water system, and then we had the Vernon Irrigation District, which became the North Okanagan Water Authority, which dealt with the rural areas outside of the two municipalities. Those have now all been amalgamated into one water utility, which is Greater Vernon Water. So they've been given the task of dealing with water in the entire Greater Vernon area. So the city was very proactive in the early 1980s. All new construction required water meters, as West Vancouver does now. We did that in the early 1980s. We implemented a universal water metering program in the city of Vernon in 1992. And at that time, water saving devices were offered to people who had water meters installed. We also have a toilet rebate program. We don't have quite the nice ad that West Vancouver has, but we give you a better deal. We give you $75.
You save money on the ad.
Yeah.
We save money on the ad, we give $75 more. And that program has been very successful. As does the universal metering program. I don't have data, but I can anecdotally recall seeing that there was some significant decrease in per capita consumption and average household consumption. Even when you exclude the variability of exterior water use, there was something like a 28% reduction in water use after the water meters compared to before. Greater Vernon Water has at times instituted irrigation restrictions. They also are looking at rate structures to promote water conservation, and the actual rates for potable water in Greater Vernon